we were always prepared, and it goes to the Miami Miracle. We had practice.
Oh my God.
We practiced that play every Saturday from the time Adam got there until we used it. Practice, 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 practice. And when we ran it in the game, it happened exactly like we practiced. And so you go to talk about people's creativity, you go to talk about what they do as a coordinator. He had us prepared for every situation, and it showed, in one of the biggest moments in our history.
Welcome back to the Fish Tank, presented by Van Horn Law Group and Casabella Design Group. Seth Levitt, and the toughest podcaster Dan Marino ever played with. He is OJ McDuffie. Juice. Whiteout after whiteout after whiteout. You must be doing the show booking here. I think we're in the right room again.
Always, Big Seth. I always say this, and our guests will hear this now for the first time probably. There should be 11 wideouts on the field at a time. Always 11 wideouts on the field at a time. You want to score. We ain't blocking for anybody, you know what I mean? But we're going to score a lot of points, Big Seth, to just get in the right hands at the right time. You know what I mean?
That's it. Get the best athletes on the field, huh?
Damn right. Damn right.
There it is. Well, speaking of great athletes and wideouts, Kenny Stills diving into the Fish Tank for the first time. And man, Kenny, we have wanted to talk to you for a minute. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. I appreciate y'all having me.
A no-brainer for us.
and so look, hold on a second, Big Seth, because I love that you said, okay, we could not wait to talk to you, honestly, man, because for one, the wideout thing is one thing, man. But we know what a hell of a player and a person you were when you were down here in South Florida, man. So we're pumped for this one for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, Juice, I sent Kenny a text, and he's always been really good communicating, but I never know where in the world my man's going to be. So he's like, of course, he's like, all right, as soon as I get back in the country, let's knock it out. And so I was like, all right, let's go find where Kenny is now, kind of the adventures of Kenny Stills. I jump on Instagram, and bro, you're living your best life, man. So there's photos of him on a surfboard, Juice, and they look like they're right out of Surfer magazine from the 70s or something. And I don't know enough about surfing, but whatever he was doing, he looked like, you talk about riding a bike. He definitely looked like he knew what he was doing there. And you're in Indonesia surfing. I don't want to mispronounce. Can you tell me the name of the beach that you were at in Indonesia?
Yeah, we were at Sorake Beach in Nias.
And I did a little Google search. That's supposed to be like surfer's paradise. That's, if you're a real surfer, and they said the waves can get intense over there. Do you just wake up one day and say, man, I want to go to Sorake Beach. Let's book a flight and let's go?
No. So basically around 2019, when I was still playing in Houston, I met a person who kind of inspired me to start going towards things that I was afraid of. A lot of people don't know this. I grew up in San Diego. I'm close to the beach. And people assume that we grew up all surfing. But I mean, most black and brown people go to the beach, we're fully clothed, We're hanging out, we're enjoying the scenery. But, swimming, surfing, that's not really our thing, And so I got in the water from time to time as a kid, but I never went past the break. I was afraid if I couldn't touch the sand underneath me in the water, then, I started to get anxious and scared. And so, 2019, I started going towards the things that made me fearful. And the ocean was one of those things. And surfing was on the other side of that fear. It's okay, if I can conquer this fear of the ocean, then I can get out there and surf. And so since about 2020, I've been, trying here and there. But this past year, it's probably been the most time that I've spent in the water. And I've been out in Bali in Indonesia. And it just happened to be that the instructor that I've been working with is from Nias. And so he's always telling us, you guys got to come to Nias. You guys got to come. And my level was finally getting, better and good enough to go out there and try this more challenging wave. And so there I was.
Big step, that's because athletes are the wide receivers are the best athletes in the world. Right. We can, whatever challenge you give us, we got it. We got it. Sometimes our height keeps us from doing other things like basketball at a higher level. But, Seth, there's no better athletes on football fields than the wideouts.
I have heard this. Yes, I've heard this on the show before. But it's funny, man, when you talk about, because you're right, Kenny, in my mind, I was like, oh, of course he surfs and he's a Cali kid. That's, and then what you just said, we just had Raheem Mostert on as well. And Raheem I didn't know he got a Billabong contract offer at 14 years old and the whole thing. And Juice stopped the interview. He's like, Raheem, we don't do that.
We don't do that. Get in the water. Black and brown we don't do that, Kenny. We don't do that.
Yeah. No, it was huge for me, man. Just a couple other things. I got scuba certified. I did some skydiving and bungee jumping, things that really truly made me afraid. it was like I had to go towards them and start building resilience again as an adult. And I say all the time to people that surfing and golf are the two hardest sports that I've learned.
Wow.
By far, surfing is challenging, not just because I was afraid of the water, but because there's so many little things that go into it, into catching a wave, and reading the wave. Every wave is different. And you got to get up on the board, you got to have balance, you got to learn how to move the board. It's just, there's so many things happening at once that it's keeping me occupied, and it's humbling the shit out of me.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. Yeah. So that's so dope, man. That's so dope,
It's
man.
unbelievable.
Yeah, and we definitely want to talk more about your travels and all these different aspects of your life, away from football that really, honestly, man, make you a really interesting dude. But football is what brought us all together here, so I'm gonna lean back into that a little bit and actually, learning about how your football journey began. I felt like, I could connect with you in your story, Kenny. You said that you were a really angry kid, a pessimistic kid, and that football was a place where you could kind of channel that anger. And from what we understand, as you began to see that you're going to be really good, obviously you ended up being really good at that sport. Your whole focus was to utilize football to build a better life for your mom. Kind of like, for me, that's what I was thinking too. And that sounds exactly like what I was doing. Football for me was a way to give my mom a better life and something better than what we grew up. And I love that, man. Can you talk about those emotions you were dealing with as a child, and then your drive to provide your family with, throughout your football career, you got to provide for your family. Talk about that part.
Yeah, man. I was really lucky. I'm one of seven, or one of eight, so I have seven siblings. But my mom had five children. I was the baby of her kids, and we spread from what, I'm 33 all the way to my oldest sister's 44. So three girls, two boys, and yeah, she was always in these really toxic relationships, and I never really saw someone like take care of her and treat her right. And throughout a lot of my childhood, we didn't really have a good relationship. Her and I butt heads a ton because she was a disciplinarian and I didn't like rules. And she was doing
It's a
her
bad
best to
combo.
keep us in line, but also just like, she had some inconsistencies in the way that she raised me. She had this funky relationship with alcohol, and that kind of made things challenging for us in our relationship. And so when I was in high school, I actually got caught bringing weed to school. And in the district that I went to school in, there was a lot of other drug problems. So marijuana wasn't a big issue. And so it's kind of a slap on the wrist. You get like an in-school suspension, and then, it never goes on your record. It was no big deal. And when that happened, my parents, she didn't know that I was smoking weed or that I had been drinking alcohol or doing any of the things that I was doing. She thought I was just like a purebred athlete. And so she's like, what's going on? She thought I was like going off the deep end or like something was wrong. But this had been something, part of my behaviors for a couple of years. And, I always kept the priorities. Football was always the main thing for me. But, we're teenage kids, so we're having fun. And so at that point, when I got in trouble, she sat me down and we had this like real heart to heart for the first time. And she opened up to me about, some of the relationships that she had and why she was the way that she was. And for the first time, I saw her as a human. I saw her as a person. And it wasn't just this person that was like always telling me what to do and always trying to keep me in line. She was someone that, had her own struggle, that had her own story. And the switch flipped and I just gained so much more respect for her. And from that moment on, it was like, damn, I have this talent and this skill set to be able to change, my family's life for generations to come and her life. And so she became the motivation for everything for me, and so you start going to training, going to workouts, you get to college, stuff becomes hard and you're like, oh, like you want to give up, you want to quit. This isn't fun. This is what I thought it was going to be. And I just started to think about, the stories that she told me and the things that she had been through and how we always had a roof over our head. We always had food to eat.
Right.
And that made it so I could never quit, that I can never give up. And yeah, that was really it, man. It was just like, something happened. Your teens, you think you know everything, and obviously you don't. And it's just, I always talk to parents now of like single parent kids. And it's just like, the more transparent and real and honest you can be with your kids, the more they're going to respect you. They might not respect you now, but they're going to respect you down the line.
Right.
And they become adults and they get there out on their own, and they realize how hard it is to do some of the things, that single parents have to do, that parents have to do in general. And so, yeah, we just had this turning point, and since then we've been gotten closer and closer.
That's amazing, man, because my mom had me when she was 15 years old, and we kind of grew up together, Kenny. And I rebelled against everything she wanted me to do. Every single thing, every move, everything that I didn't like. You know what I mean? She made me do it. And hell, do we both look back and reflect and say, "Damn, they were doing the absolute right thing for us and the best thing for us," even though they were going through their own personal struggles. But they always, you said you're the baby. Yeah, I was the only child, so that's like being the baby. So I get it, man. I get it, bro.
Yeah, no, I have a ton of respect for my mom and the things that she's been through. And like, hey, they're humans. My mom and my dad, both of them, they were going through their own things. And my mom started at 17 with her first child, and so they're young adults trying to figure it out. There's no playbook, especially when it's a generational thing of single moms. And so I have a ton of respect for them and everything that they've done, and it's kept me from having having kids at a young age, and it's helped me figure out how to be a better partner and to look for better partners. And it's laid the foundation for everything in my life.
And and speaking of that, when you retired in 2021, despite like myself not winning a Super Bowl, earning some of the personal accolades that we chase, you felt fulfilled because you were able to do for your mom, what you were setting out to do. I mean, that was my goal too, like to make sure my mom was taken care of because of what she had done for me. Talk about that part of it. Like, no matter what, we all know football's a team sport. You can't do all this stuff on your own, but hell, be fulfilled. I was happy that my mom was able to come down to South Florida, live a great life. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. To be able to leave the game without any major surgeries, major injuries, not, not too many concussions, feeling like my brain's in a good place, and to be able to accomplish what I set out to do, take care of moms, and when I really sat back and I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I did everything that, I wanted to, as far as, what I set out to for my goals. I'd love to have been a offensive player of the year,
Right.
To have won a Super Bowl. I'd love to have gone to the Pro Bowl or had the accolades. And sometimes I try to be a little too realistic about my skill set or the teams that I was on, or all those types of things. But in the grand scheme of things, yeah, I'm extremely proud of myself and the way that I carry myself, the person that I became, the teammate that I was, the lessons that I've learned, and yeah, ultimately I did what I came to do, and that's to make sure that mom's is taken care of, that she's happy, and that I could be the first person or first man that I think that was in her life to take care of her and treat her the right way.
That's what's up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what's up.
That's so good. I hate to, well, I guess we did kind of bookend your career, right? The motivation with football and then retirement. So I hate to kind of fast forward through all of that, but we're a Dolphins focused podcast. So forgive me for fast forwarding to get you to Miami, although Juice fast is probably the right word to use here,
yeah,
right? We're talking about Kenny
fast.
Stills.
Yeah, damn right it is.
Not only were you a Blazer on the track and on the field, but things seem to always happen fast for you in football. Like you were an instant starter as a true freshman in Oklahoma. You left the school early, right, after 3 years for the draft. And then as a rookie with the Saints, you're starting 10 games again. And Juice, as a rookie now, 5 touchdowns, you average 20 yards per catch. Yeah. That ain't so bad, for a rookie season. But then after just 2 seasons, Kenny, in New Orleans that were, productive, you get word that you're being traded to Miami in 2015 to play for, I guess what started as Joe Philbin's Dolphins ultimately became Dan Campbell's Dolphins. And then before you blinked your eyes, they were Adam Gase's Dolphins.
Keep it going.
Right. Yeah. So. I mean, Kenny was in the midst of all of that. But what was it like for a young player who had as much success as you did, personal success, right? I mean, the game, I don't want to say it came easy because that diminishes the work you put in, but clearly at every step of the way, you were productive, even though you were making that next step in the game. But to find out that you had been traded after you thought you would, I'd imagine you thought you were a contributor, then, what was it like entering this new space in this new city with new teammates and all of that change?
Yeah. I look back at my career, and the trade to the Dolphins was one of the biggest challenges of my career. I had been, like you said, in a championship type of program with the Saints. They had come off a championship a couple years before I got there. Drew Brees, Marcus Colson, Jimmy Graham, all these dudes who were professionals, deep into their career and knew how to handle business. And so I fell in line when I got there. Everything that they did, I did. I just, I knew that if I mimicked everything that they were doing, I had an opportunity to be a great. I had an opportunity to learn how to be a pro. And so when I got traded to Miami, I just, I couldn't, I don't know where I was mentally or emotionally, but I didn't feel the same type of juice in that locker room. I met Joe Philbin. He was always harping us about, we couldn't wear hoods in the meeting rooms. We couldn't have pockets in our shorts. And like, he was worried about all these little details. We'd be doing walkthrough and our foot had to be on the sideline. It just felt like middle school detention or something. I didn't feel like a professional athlete. And yeah, and I let that really control, my attitude and my effort. And so very early on, I wasn't into it. Like for the off-season program, I went to a couple days. I didn't really, connect with the receiver coach. And so off-season program was voluntary. I just stopped going. I'm like, I'm not getting anything out of this. And so that type of attitude, that type of effort really leaked into that season. And, I ended up having, the worst statistical season of my career until the last year of my career. And so, yeah, it was a huge learning lesson for me, because in that off season, I, had to take a look in the mirror and say, hey, look, bro, like, during the season, I wanted to blame the quarterback. I want to blame the offensive line. I want to blame the coaches. It was everybody else's fault but mine. And, and regardless of if, I had a better attitude or had a better effort, I don't know if that changes the outcome of that season because it was very, very rocky.
Right.
But I learned what it means to be a professional in that season by showing up, having a good attitude, giving my best effort and leading by example, right? If there was nobody on that team, to lead and set the standard, then I should have been that guy because I have that characteristic and I know better. And I kind of just fell in line with the general frequency or status quo of that team in that year, and it showed. And yeah, I was frustrated and upset with myself at the end of that season, and really looked in the mirror and told myself I had to lock in, and that's what I did when Coach Gase came in.
We obviously, we don't want to talk about everything that's going on in the locker room, Kenny, but it seemed like there was a lot going on. Obviously, you see the changes, the turmoil, things like that, man. I can only imagine how tough a season can be when there's a certain attitude or whatnot in a locker room. And coming from where you came from, like, wow, this is not the way, in my opinion, things should be. This because I know that I was in some really great locker rooms under Coach Shula, under Coach Johnson. But damn, when you come from one situation to another, it's kind of like this isn't how things are supposed to be. And then you kind of, like you said, kind of tune out yourself. Like, shit, let me just get through this, basically, instead of, and I'm not. No, I got traded here. I didn't choose here really. But hell, man, let me just get through this, make this money, go out and do, what I mean? So it had to be a tough situation.
Yeah. I mean, you're young and naive. I was young and naive. And so I assume that every NFL team is run a certain way. Every NFL team is Super Bowl caliber. Every NFL team invests in the cafeteria, has great training staff, on and on and on. You assume that that's what it's like. And for, the average fan, they don't know that. It's based off of how much money and how much, the owner wants to put into the team. And so every place is different. And so, yeah, I got there and I thought that, hey, I knew in New Orleans, if I showed up and I did my job, the ball was going to be in the right place. The coordinators were going to get us open and we had an opportunity to win. And so when I got to Miami and it wasn't that way, I was confused. I'm like, damn, I feel like my little league coaches would have got us more prepared. Just like all these things start to happen in your head where you're like, bro, this is not how it's supposed to be. Yeah. And I literally got to a point that I was like, well, I don't know if this is what I want to do anymore. If this is the type of situation that I'm going to be in, like I need to go work corporate or something.
In year 3. Your third year of your career, you were like, maybe football's not for me anymore.
Yes. When you get on a team like that, we were preparing every week with the same game plan that we lost with the week before. I'm like, that's the definition of insanity, right? Like, and I came
Yeah.
from a football family. I've been around football my whole life. You sit me in a meeting room and I'm gonna tell you, like, coach, that's not gonna work. I don't care how hard we try. And so it got to the point where, like you said, you're just collecting your check, trying not to get hurt. But that is not, the attitude that I wish that I would have taken, in that time, in that point in my career. But all I could do was, put that behind me and look toward the next year and really lock in, really train. And, and the next season, I go into Adam's office as soon as he was hired, and I'm like, hey, whatever I got to do to help this team win, just let me know. Like, I'm all in your corner. Putting that stuff from last year behind me, and I spent all off season there, getting to know the training staff, getting my body right, getting in shape, and then was eventually elected captain. And that's basically what it was. Like, hey, I'm gonna lead this. If nobody else is gonna lead this team, I'm gonna lead this team, and we got to go win.
Kenny, in fairness to you, you talked about being young and naive, and granted, all professional football players are, it's a young man's game. But we talked about kind of the fast track to getting there. What were you, 21 years old? I mean, because you were a young guy. I was kind of shocked when you and I finally started working together. I don't know, you were 4 or 5 years in your career and somehow you were like 22, 23 years old. I was like, how is this even possible? So you got there to the Saints at a young age. So by the time you got to the Dolphins, you talk about being young and naive. You were young, like you were really young, younger than your peers, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, young in age, but man, like I said, I grew up young, like early, very early from, 10, 11, 12 years old. Like I was, my mom, my mom was in and out, doing her thing. And so I felt the responsibility, and I just know what I'm capable of. My dad always talks about too much is given, much is required, and so like I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know what I'm capable of, and I just have high standards for what I want to accomplish. I feel like I should win on every play. I should get the ball on every play. I should score on every play. My team should be winning. Like that's all I know. I've won at every single level and everything that I've done. And so that's the expectation that I have. And so when it didn't happen, I was extremely frustrated. And like I said, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. If this is the type of program that I'm going to be a part of, then I got to go do it somewhere else because it wasn't working for me.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't working for anyone.
Nobody. Yeah. Right. Kenny, both you and Seth mentioned Adam Gase, and we all know that, Adam Gase took over in 2016. And you talked about also how, you went into his office and, you were willing and able, honestly, to do whatever it took to be successful. And that's what you did in that 2016 season. It was one of your most productive seasons of your career. I mean, you averaged over 17 yards a catch. I had a career high at 9 touchdowns. And, you were a major weapon for Ryan Tannehill, along with Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker. Tell us what clicked that year. I mean, because was it Gates' offense? Was Tannehill finally developing? Or was it just a collective of the offensive players, man? What really clicked for you that year in 2016?
Yeah, it was definitely a combination of things, man. We ran the ball so well. You mentioned Jay Ajayi. We ran that stretch.
Yeah, I forgot about your running backs. I'm about wide receivers. You know how I am, dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You
erased them from the roster, Kenny.
We ran that thing so well, and it helped, with the play action game. And yeah, it just clicked. What Adam was doing, he simplified the game for us, and we were able to play fast. Tannehill played lights out, and I mean, when I tell you like the amount of effort we put into that season, Tannehill would be getting the call in his headset, and if he didn't hear it all the way or before it finished, I could leave the huddle because I knew the play, I knew the game plan like through and through. I put so much into that season, and we just became tight as a group. After kind of going through that struggle together with Philbin, and it was like we were just happy to have something new, and we were excited about the opportunity, and we knew we had to go out and perform so that we could keep Adam around. And it was just, we felt like the tide was turning. For me, it was a contract year. I played a majority of that season with a calf strain. And so I just was like week to week trying to make sure that I could stay out there and earn my keep and help the team win and, try to make that playoff run. But man, we had a bunch of exciting players, man. Watching Jay do his thing and getting out there and really like blocking for him and putting our body on the line and that type of stuff. The team meshed well. And, obviously that helped us on the field.
I want to follow that up real quick, Big Seth, because
Sure.
I love the fact that, you got a wide receiver that's loving what the running back's doing, but we all realize that wide receivers are big contributors to running backs having success. But you've got a guy, that's willing to do whatever, and we know if the run game goes well, Kenny, then the pass game, the play action you talked about is going to go well as well, man. And I love that new voice, new face, new offense, new life when it comes to an offense. And Adam Gase, of course he gets shit down here because of the lack of team success. But how much fun was it playing in an offense like that, where you got a smart guy, a genius like that maybe that didn't work out as well as a head coach, but damn, when game planning came along, it had to be a lot of fun, man, because I love game planning.
Yeah. Yeah, we always had the tools. Talk about football being a game of chess. We had our moves lined up. We knew if team was going to come and play zone, we had our zone beaters. We knew if the team was going to come play man, we had our man beaters. If they want to switch in the second quarter to play man, boom, we got our man beaters. And he would recognize that stuff and we would go. And that's what I really appreciated about, his style, was that we were always prepared for whatever they had. He had a lot on his plate. Being the head coach, and we see that challenge for a lot of guys that go from coordinator to head coach, and that's something that's it is what it is. Guys got to make more money. They want their opportunity, whatever. But we were always prepared, and it goes to the Miami Miracle. We had practice.
Oh my God!
We practiced that play every Saturday from the time Adam got there until we used it. Practice. And when we ran it in the game, it happened exactly like we practiced. And so you go to talk about people's creativity. You go to talk about, what they do as a coordinator. He had us prepared for every situation. And it showed, in one of the biggest moments in our history.
Yeah. High praise indeed. And we're going to get back to the Miami Miracle because we have some follow-up questions there.
We do.
But I won't fast forward here because 2016 was incredibly significant for you for another reason as well. And, and that, take football out of the equation, and just as a human being living in this country, you became increasingly hurt, frustrated, saddened by what was happening around us, both locally and nationally, obviously in regards to police brutality, the deaths of unarmed men of color. And on September 11th of that year, prior to kickoff of, I think it was the opening game of the season against Seattle, you and Jelani Jenkins, Arian Foster, Michael Thomas, you guys take a knee during the national anthem. There was obviously this protest that had begun with Colin Kaepernick, and to say the least, it became incredibly polarizing. Can you take us through where you were in respect to just your headspace leading up to, I don't know whether it's the weeks, the days, the hours leading up to the decision to go out there and take a knee. And from what I was reading, you called a team meeting prior to doing that to talk to the team as a whole about like, hey, this is something we're all facing. Let's get into this thing. And you found out very quickly that just how divisive that could become, or you found out who people were and what they were feeling very quickly, from what I understand.
Yeah. So, for people that don't know, like I grew up in Oceanside, California. It's near Camp Pendleton, our military base. And so my influences in my life were all Marines or people in service. All my coaches in every sport, any male mentor that I ever had, either served or family served. So a lot of pride and respect for people in the service. But yeah, so leading up to September 11th, opening game in Seattle, I had been seeing what was happening. Megan Rapinoe was taking a knee during the national anthem. Colin and Eric had sat on the bench a couple times. I think Michael Bennett as well in preseason. And I had been seeing what was happening around police brutality in our country. And I just felt, once again, young and naive, that if we could use our platform as athletes, people look up to us, they pay attention to us. If we could educate people on what was happening in our country, we have the resources, we're educated enough, we'll learn about the problem, and we will be able to make a change, right? Problem, solution. So
if only it were so easy, right?
right.
Yeah.
And so, leading up to the game, I, started calling people that are my mentors, and one of them is my Pop Warner coach. His name is Coach Joe, and he was a Marine for like 25 years. And I just wanted to give him a heads up, talk to him, get his opinion at that point. Ultimately he was like, hey, your grandpa served, I served, all your coaches served. Like, do not disrespect these men, people that have lost their lives, so on and so forth. I would like it if he would not get involved in the protests. And he's like a second father to me. So I'm like, I appreciate your insight, but I'm going to pray on it and do what's, I feel like is best in my gut. And so, yeah, the night before the game, I call a team meeting. I tell Adam, if we can just get the players only. And I stand up in front of the team with Michael and Arian and Jelani. And I'm like, hey guys, we're thinking about, getting involved in the protest, but, obviously we like to do something as a team. We are a team. And we just want to bring this to your guys' attention before we go out there tomorrow for the game. And yeah, it was just like an eruption of, people yelling and screaming and cursing and upset, not wanting to get involved. And that kind of is what it was. And so we knew that then and there, like, okay, then we'll do our thing. But ultimately we're here to win football games. So we gotta win the game. And so that was that. And so, yeah, on the morning of, we're warming up and I'm putting my pads on and stuff, and I go over to the guys and I'm like, are you guys still with this? Are we all in on this, or what's happening? And
the three other guys you're referring to. Okay, got it.
To Michael, to Mike T, to Arian, to Jelani. And they're like, yeah, we're with it. Let's do it. I'm like, all right. And so, man, like you get nervous before games, but not like I haven't been like
different nervous. This is not just game. This is not just a game this time.
Yeah, no, I was like shaken. Like I usually get that. I usually pray before the games, just like giving thanks, for the situation that I'm in, playing a blessing over both teams and all the guys around the league, that we can all give all the glory to God and stay healthy, And so at that point in time, I couldn't even hold on to my thoughts while we're down on a knee. I was just shaking, and like I couldn't get through my usual prayer, and just knew the type of backlash we were going to receive and what was coming with this decision. But I also knew the intention that I had in my heart, right? Which was just to try and make a difference, to try and educate people. I needed to educate myself as well, but really to try and, stop all of these things from happening in a country where I feel like we have the technology, we have the resources, we have the smarts to not be doing what we're doing. And so, yeah, it was just a decision that I made off of a gut feeling, off of something in my heart. I didn't know too much about the history of movements or the civil rights movement. I was a pure athlete. I played sports every season, and school wasn't, something that I necessarily loved. I knew that I had to pass my classes so that I could stay eligible. And so at that point in time, it was just something I was making a decision off of a gut feeling. And after I got involved in the protest, it was like, all right, I got to educate myself. And so I started reading a ton, listening to podcasts and watching documentaries, and really doing everything that I could to be able to hold my own in some of these conversations about these, really challenging issues.
What if going bankrupt was the best thing that happened to you? Whether it's your wages being garnished, car repossessed, house foreclosed, or you're suffocating with debt, a good bankruptcy attorney can give you peace of mind that you need and deserve. My name is Chad Van Horn from Van Horn Law Group, and I've personally seen people thrive after filing for bankruptcy. The shame of bankruptcy is just a ploy to keep you in debt forever. There is no shame to work with Van Horn Law Group to get rid of your debt for good. If you're ready to get your life back, call us today. Se habla español.
Kenny, man, I really applaud what you did, man. I do, man. It took a lot of courage to make that kind of statement. And we all know that some others did not get opportunities following that, the protests. And it was so real the way you did it. You talk about how you educated yourself on it and how you made a stance. We can go back to our moms again. My mom had sit-ins back in high school when things weren't right. Or felt that things weren't right, and trying to make a change, trying to make a difference, man. And the fact that, we're in a league that's 75 to 80% black and brown, but some weren't willing to take the stance. And I get it. I mean, some people can't take a stance. We know that. Some people cannot do that, man, but you're willing to do it. And you weren't trying to make it, some kind of a trend. You did it for all the right reasons. And that couldn't have been easy to put yourself out there like that. But what really stood out to me was the work you began to do in addition to the peaceful protest. You made it clear that that it was not meant to be a disrespect to the military. And it really meant to not disrespect to any other than just the injustice was what you were talking about. But then you back that up. I mean, from town hall conversations to police ride-alongs to visits with military veterans, it seemed like you were very intentional about learning and growing and, and trying to be an agent of change. Was that always part of the plan, or did it morph to that? Or did you, kind of grow into that? And then after you began to really pour into that work, what did you find out?
Yeah. I attribute who I was as a professional growing up, seeing people like Junior Seau, right? Like when I was a kid, we go to the beach and Junior would be there working out in the sand with pro guys, college guys, high school guys. Afterwards, he'd bring everybody together, talk to everyone. Like he was a human being before he was the football player. And so from high school to college and the NFL, like I always just tried to be that. Somebody who was very accessible, reachable, a regular dude. Yes, I happen to play football. Yes, you might happen to watch me for entertainment, but like, I'm going to come talk to you, hang out, we'll take a picture, whatever it is. Like, I'm just like you. I just do this thing. And so when it came to the protest, it was like, I know how to talk to people. I know how to communicate. I'm not going to let the narrative, what they're reading on their phones or what they're seeing on their screens, be who I am, because I know who I am. And so I know I'm not anti-military. I know I'm not anti-police. I'm against the blue code. Yes, I think it's messed up that an officer can commit a crime here, not serve any time, then go to another district and be hired there. Like there's things that frustrate me within these systems, but I'm not against police officers. I'm not against the military. And I know that. So I'll go and I'll talk to the police and we'll go hang out and we'll spend time together. I'll go and I'll talk to the military and we'll hang out and we'll spend time together. All these people saying that I'm anti-military, they've never even been to the VA. So
Right.
what do? I go down to the VA. We spend time with them. And those people are in there like, oh, you're Kenny Stills? You're the guy taking a knee? Thank you so much. This is exactly what I fought for.
Wow.
And so it was just, it's something that's a part of me, but it was also just so like obvious that I could go and say, hey, like I know who I am. Like you can't tell me who I am. You can't tell me what I stand for. I'm literally just here saying like, hey, we can do better. If you love somebody or something, you hold them accountable. You hold them to the highest standard. I love America so much that I want it to be better.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. That's great. If you fall in love with somebody and let them walk all over you because you're lost in the sauce, then that's your fault. I'm not letting that happen. Any place that I go, I'm trying to raise that frequency. I'm trying to make it as better as I can, because that's what I hope. When I leave, I don't want a tombstone. I want to be cremated. But if I had a tombstone, it would just, my little dash would mean that I made an impact on the place that I was in. And that's all I can hope for. And so I was, happy and proud of what I did. And obviously over time, my thoughts have changed about some of the systems that are in place, but I felt like I did the best that I could at the time with what I knew.
Yeah, man.
Man.
I was going to say, Juice, like you think you made a difference. You made a difference in a lot of people's lives, huge impact. I think some of the work the Dolphins still do. I know you, I imagine you did a lot of work with Jason Jenkins and, the Football Unites program and so on and so forth. And you were kind of on the ground floor of a lot of that. But then you started you did those tours. You went on those tours of the Southern U.S. And that was, I remember you came to my office, right? We were talking about what you were doing. And so, Juice, every year when the Dolphins name their Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year nominee, we make a donation. Jason, having won the award, he believes in it. And he believes in the work guys are doing. And so we make a donation, nothing huge, but just kind of a show of like, support in the work these guys are doing. And I reached out to Kenny, and I remember you came in and you were telling me about this tour you were taking. Can you talk a little bit about the tour and what inspired that? And Juice asked, like, what did you learn? It had to be eye-opening going to all these different states and all these different cities that historically dealt with these issues that you were trying to confront.
Yeah. So being a California boy, all we knew is what we read in the history books about the South and what we watched on, in movies. And so, yeah, I just felt like if I was going to attack, the issues of racism and police brutality, and I needed to understand, more about our country and where some of these issues were really prevalent. And so, yeah, I rented an RV in the off season. I linked up with the Justice League, which is a national nonprofit that does work in the space, and they connected me with grassroots organizations all across the South. And so we just did like a 21-day road trip. I think we, hitting Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, the Carolinas. But yeah, going to the National African American History Museums, going to the Laurier Motel, speaking on literacy. So I'd read books to kids. I went to reentry programs. I went to juvenile detention centers, just learning about every issue possible that we're dealing with, in the United States, especially in the South. Obviously learned a ton, but just wanted to do my best to explain to people, why I was doing what I was doing, to be an influence with the young people, talking about mental health as well, because, once I started the protest, I really saw, what the world was like. Grew up an athlete and somebody that had a skill. And so there wasn't a lot of pushback, from people, throughout my whole life until I decided to use my voice. Right. And once I decided to speak up for something, it was like, oh, I had high school parents, calling me crazy names on Facebook. I had kids that I had grown up with, calling me racial slurs.
Right.
And so my whole world changed, right? Before it was like, damn, everybody's on my side. Everybody loves me, yada, yada, yada. And then I take the knee, and then it was like, whoa, it felt like half the world hated me, and that's something that's really challenging to deal with. And so I started doing therapy and mindset work. And so I was sharing that with the kids on the trip too. Like, hey, we got meditation, we got yoga, we got breathing techniques. There's all these free things that we can be doing, to work on ourselves. And so it was a combination of me learning, me sharing, and also, just trying to let people know, like, hey, there's somebody out there cares. You think somebody doesn't care? Somebody cares. I promise you. I drove out here. I'm not getting paid to do this. My buddy and I are in an RV together eating PB&J sandwiches. Like, like we would finish an event and drive through the night to go to the next event. Some nights not taking a shower, just like totally, thugging it out. And so it was a great process, and something that we did 2 years in a row. And it was really cool to be able to come back a second time and show these kids like, hey, this is no one and done thing. We're here again. And I loved it.
Kenny, real quick, one more time for the people that are not listening out there, please let them know one more time that it was never anti-police, anti-military, and you are an agent of change and inspiration to all these kids out there, man. Just, I want them to hear, people in the back to hear this.
Yeah, 100%. Was never, could never be, was never anti-police, was never anti-military. I said the people that made the biggest impact in my life were all Marines. So still to this day. And, so it's always been about holding this place accountable to the values that we say that we're about. We talk about the Pledge of Allegiance. We talk about, with liberty, with freedom and justice for all. Like, hey, and if that's what that means, then that's what I try to hold us accountable to. And yeah, it's not complicated. All the narratives and all the stories that are put out there, they're unless they're talking about me trying to make this place a better place, then they're wrong.
Well, so Juice, you can see why we were proud to support, into, like I said, in a small way, but we were happy to help buy some of that peanut butter and jelly, I guess, or, to get you on the road. So it's a little weird for me after having that level of conversation here to kind of bounce back and forth between football and your activism. But realistically, that's what you were doing on a daily basis, right? You were going to work and trying to be the best football player you could be, but at the same time, trying to make change. So I am going to ask another football question. And this one is tied to something you alluded to earlier in the 2018 season. Specifically, that game, the Miami Miracle, was December 9th. Was the date of that game. And, the game will forever be remembered as the Miami Miracle. Kenyon Drake will forever be remembered as the hero for finishing that play off. It was a play that involved two laterals. And, let's not forget, Kenny, that one of those you were involved with, right? So ultimately he beats Gronkowski. We talked to Kenyon. It was cool to talk about the whole, did Gronk really not have the angle and the whole thing, and lifted you guys to that 34-33 improbable victory. But your role in that game, not just that moment, your role was significant in that moment, but your role in that game was monumental. And I don't know that people reflect upon that because that moment was so electric at the end. But 8 catches, Juice, 9 targets, 8
Yes.
catches, 135 yards and a touchdown. That ain't a bad day at the office. Okay. It's a monster game. And then to top it all off, the Miami Miracle, it was cool to hear you talk about how well you guys practiced that and how prepared you guys were for it. But if you don't catch that 14-yard pass and not just catch the ball, but like that pivot you had to make, right? You almost had to get, you kind of, I don't know if it was left and right or right.
It was dope.
Left.
It was dope. It was smooth. It was smooth.
Yeah. And then obviously and Devontae, I think, just had to like catch a pitch, right? He had the easiest deal in the whole thing. But if you don't do that, then the whole thing falls apart. It doesn't happen. Talk to us about what, I know it's not your style to say, hey, what about me? I was important in that game too. That's not who you are. But what do you remember from that game? And then from that moment, from the time you guys got in the huddle, knew that was the play call, it would just be really cool to hear it. We heard it from Kenyon's perspective. It would be really cool to hear it from yours as well.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to tell you guys that you watched the game. We shouldn't have even been in that position. There was a drive earlier in the quarter that I caught a ball an underneath route, got up the field, and then kind of like went down early, like before the first down, thinking
right before the first down.
Right before it. So it was like a long 3rd and 1. And the reason why I went down, because the ball was kind of sliding all over the place, and then one got popped out earlier. I think one of the McCourty twins had punched one out, and I got it back. But so I was like more worried about ball security than I was thinking about the first down. So boom, I get down thinking like, oh, I already got the first down, but I was short. We get stuffed. They get the ball back. All the momentum starts changing. So that's really when the portion of this started for me, because I was really working on and with my like life coach at the time about working on being positive all the time. And so when that happened, usually I would have been on the sideline, like flustered and frustrated and upset. I was on the sideline, like, it's okay. We're going to be okay. And so from that point on, the whole rest of the game, I'm just like in my mind, trying to stay positive. They get, they go down the kick field goal. They go down, kick field goal. The game's out of reach. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, we're going to win this thing. I never thought anything outside of that. And so we get the ball back. He calls the play. We're in the huddle. I'm like, all right, this is like, we're going to win this game. Like, I never thought anything else, which was really different for me in this time of my life. Like, I had used negativity as motivation always. I loved to read somebody talking shit about me in the newspaper. I loved to, it was the negativity was the thing that fed me. And so in this moment, I'm like, oh, we got this. We're going to win. We're going to win. We're going to win, whatever. And so he called the play. I get it. And when we had practice and walkthrough, it was always like there was something that you had to do. Yes, I had to run the end cut. I had to make the catch. But then it was a little bit of freestyle before you pitch it to the next person. And so when I got it, it was like, okay, well, let me make these guys feel like I'm going to do something different than just pitch it. And so that's how you kind of get the little pivot, jab step. And then they're about to tackle me. So then I let it go. And from that moment on, it was just like, okay, it's out of my hands. Like, I'll just see what happens. And the way that it happened, it was unreal because everything happened the way we practice. And so it just unfolded in the most perfect way possible. And then it happens and he scores. And I literally, I'm on the field just on my back, like in awe, because I was doing this exercise, in my head about being positive, radical positivity and manifesting, these positive things. And it happened. And so I'm laying there like not only so happy that we won after I had almost blew the game for us, but that this thing that I was working so hard on in the mind, this mindset work now was like forever stamped and a part of me as something that truly works. And so, yeah, the Miami Miracle meant something totally different for me than everyone else because this mindset stuff really, downloaded in that day and has always been a part of me since.
Yo, Kenny, I'm gonna tell you this, man. That was the most amazing time for me because I know so many people. I'm sitting in the alumni suite. I got to do the post game show, right? And I'm sitting in the suite, and I'm like, damn, man, like we really had a chance. But to see all the people that left the stadium and all the New England fans that were coming down to the 100 levels to celebrate. That was the best experience ever, seeing how disappointed they were on that last play and how bad our fans felt when their asses were in the parking lot trying to get back into a big old grid of nothing out there because you can't go anywhere. I don't know why you're leaving early. Dude, that was absolutely the most amazing thing. But to see how you experienced through your eyes, and like Seth talked about the game you were already having, and you talk about how you came up short on that one play, and then how you could have almost maybe not. I mean, we could have lost the game possibly on that. Man, that perspective, nobody gets that perspective. Nobody has your perspective like you just told us about this play, because all they see is Kenya Drake throwing the ball into the stands. You know what I mean? And that's it. But, bro, it starts with everything you talked about well before that play was even called, well before we even knew that Adam Gase had put this play in, over and over and over again. It's like we had a spike play put in for us back in the day with Danny Marino. Mm-hmm. Those things, you never know when those things are going to work. And fuck, it worked like you drew it up like that.
Yeah. It was like ordained on that day. Pow. That's how it was going to go down. And like I said, it was huge day for me because the mindset stuff became like real. Yeah. I saw it in action, and it totally changed who I was, right? As far as how I was going to compete from that point on. And obviously it was a monumental moment for us. It wasn't a huge part of our season or us, having success down the line or whatever. But yeah, it was a huge moment for all of us.
So cool to hear that too, because I went to rewatch it and I was trying to find you in the celebration, right? Because it seemed like the whole sidelines just met him in the end zone, and I never saw you. And I guess it's because you were laying on your back and having this reflective moment. So it's just really cool to hear that. But I also saw that play earlier where you did slide, and the announcer, I can't remember who it was, but he's like, "Oh, I don't think he made the first down." I don't know if it was Phil Simms or somebody was like, "I don't think he got the first down."
It's short of the first down. It is.
And so for you to have a game like you were having, yeah, you could see, we've all seen it. We've all been around guys who have had a lot of success in a game where the team has lost, and they've really been pissed at everybody else. Like, I did this thing, I did my part. And it sounds like, you could have gone the opposite direction, but this work that you were doing on yourself really put you in that frame of mind. It's just, I don't mean to restate everything you said, but I'm having kind of like Juice just did, just some real appreciation for being able to see that moment through your lens is super cool.
Another thing that I would share, like simple things, mindset stuff that we worked on, a very easy story, but like things, we talk about being pessimistic, you talk about being negative. When I was working with my life coach at the time, she asked me, what do you think when the ball is in the air? And for me, it was always don't drop it. Right. It was don't drop it. It was automatically when she asked me, don't drop it. And she's like, why don't you try this? When the ball's in the air, imagine that it's in a tunnel and the only person that I can go to is you. And start to think something like, that's my ball, I'm going to go get it. Change this negative self-talk to something positive. And so you go back and watch the clip from the Buffalo game. Ryan throws me into double coverage on on the back left corner in the end zone. And there's 4 arms that are reaching for the ball. And I go and just pluck it. It's the same week I'm working on this exercise, the same week that stuff happens. And so just to share with the fans that are out there that like all of us, athletes, not athletes, we have these little things that we're doing within the mind that are training us to see things in a negative way. And if we can just switch those things to something positive, so much can change. And, that's, little things that we're dealing with, as athletes and as people all the time. It's like just eliminating negative words that come out of your mouth. Yes, the self-talk is different, right? But when you communicate something, when it comes out of your mouth, when you verbalize it, you give it power. And so over my journey, and trying to, just find myself in a better place, it's just eliminating all of these things, eliminating can't, eliminating never, eliminating the word hate, like finding other words that you can substitute. I highly dislike that, or I can't do this yet, or, I don't know, just want to encourage people that are out there to understand like these little things make such a big difference, and over time, obviously, they'll make a huge change in our lives.
Kenny, it's been so good. I know we're taking up a lot of your time, man, but you have so much great stuff to talk about, and you've been so gracious with your time. And I know Seth will tell you that later in the podcast, because we're almost done here. We're not gonna keep you forever, bro. We're not. I promise you. Okay. But there's so much good stuff that we want to talk to you about, man. It's been so good hearing what you have to say about so many amazing things. And so I want to get into this a little bit, like The following season, you experienced yet another regime change, and your fourth new Miami Dolphins head coach in 4 seasons. When Adam Gase was fired and Brian Flores was hired and was named the head man, there was some well documented bumps in the road, to put it mildly, and then ultimately you became part of one of the most significant trades in team history when you and Laremy Tunsil were sent to Houston in exchange for a gang of draft picks. And as you might imagine, that draft is still talked about to this day, given the fact that it resulted in the Dolphins actually selecting Tua Tagovailoa and a slew of other players still on the roster to this day. What do you remember about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it clear as day. When Flo was brought in, you could tell they were trying to put together a more disciplined team, and they were focused on. It felt like control, right? Adam, gave us a little bit more freedom. He was a players coach. B Flo was, coming from that Patriots regime of, not so player friendly. It's our way or the highway. And so, yeah, when he got there, I loved him, to be honest. The man knows his football. He treated every player the same. If you were, the captain, or if you were, some rookie that had just shown up. And his attention to detail was great. We knew every situation that could possibly happen in a football game. And that's something that I love. Like I said, I'm a student of the game. I love the game. And so, I enjoyed, bits and pieces of who he was as a coach. But I also felt that whether it was him or somebody in the front office or above was trying to make a point when it came to me, my activism, and the other things that I was doing off the field. And so it all really started with him and I, the first day of full padded practice. So we get out there and he comes running by the receivers and he's talking shit. He's like, I need to see which one of my receivers can block. I need to see which one of my receivers can block. And I'm like, he started talking trash, and I'm like, so the door's open. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I was on the front side of that Brandon Bolden run for 60 yards last year when we tapped that ass. And he did not like that. And so from that moment on, we had a little bit of beef, because he's well known between all the other teams that he's coached for that he's sensitive, and he's easy to get under his skin. I didn't know that until that moment. I thought any other coach, we all play football, we're all between the lines. You want to talk trash, then the door's open for trash talking, right? Like, I didn't start it, he started it. Right. We're all grown men here. And so, so that struck a nerve, and, we end up going in that day, and he does things more in Patriots fashion, where we have a group team meeting after practice. Usually after practice, it's just offense and just defense or just special teams, but he brought the team in. And instead of going over the film and stuff, he kind of just berated the team, was telling us like our Super Bowl was beating the Patriots and nobody respects this team and all this stuff. And so after the meeting, the guys are coming to me like, damn, Kenny, what'd you do? Because some of the defensive guys didn't hear this whole
right.
Right. And so, I told them what happened. And so then that was kind of when our beef started. And then, obviously the NFL signed the Inspire Change deal with Jay-Z and all that type of stuff. And then they asked me about it, and I gave my honest opinion, which was like, hey, I don't like the way that he went about it. I didn't think that Jay-Z needed to, talk down on Kaepernick and the movement and us kneeling in order to get, his job done. But hey, he didn't seem very well informed, was basically what I said about Jay-Z. And so then, the next day at practice, they decided to play a whole playlist of Jay-Z songs. And, me, like I said, like, I love a little bit of beef. Like, you're not going to get underneath my skin. Right. I grew up with older siblings, and like, I got tough skin. And so they're playing the music, and instead of me being like mad or sad or upset, like, I go to Flo and I'm like, yo, this playlist sucks. And so I told them multiple times, and it wasn't because I wanted to spite him or spite Jay-Z, but I'm like, fam, like, Empire State of Mind is not getting me going for practice. And so that got underneath his skin, and at that point I wasn't medically cleared to be doing one-on-ones because I had a little minor like hamstring injury or something. And so we get through the beginning of warm-ups and stuff, and we do one-on-ones first, and he comes to me, he's like, Kenny, you're up. He knew I wasn't cleared, but he's like, Kenny, you're up. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go out, I run a route, I run like a little 8-yard stop route, boom, I catch it. And I had created so much separation, the DB was nowhere near. And so B-Flow was standing there, where the defense would stand. And when I caught it, I just like looked back at him and stared at him as I trotted away. And that was kind of the last straw on that. And then I end up, calling out Stephen Ross for his fundraiser for Donald Trump. And then within a couple of weeks, I was traded.
Well, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, there's no follow-up to that question.
There's no follow-up to that whatsoever.
Oh, man. Empire State of Mind is not getting me going.
It's not doing it. Yeah, it's not doing it for me, Big Seth.
That is... that might be the quote of the whole interview. That was so good. All right.
Oh my God, that was so good. My goodness. We're not going to take up too much more of your time, but we do have, two fun segments that we'd like to close the show out with. The first one is a new segment that we're trying out that we call Fish Tank Numerology. And man, you've had your share of numbers. I mean, from 4 in college to 84, and then 12 in New Orleans, 10 when you were here in Miami, and then back to 12. Can you share to us how you landed your numbers?
Yeah. So 4 was worn as a 1-up to my dad. He wore 3 in Wisconsin. So I wanted to be better than him. I was trying to.
You do like some beef, don't you?
So 4 was that. I'm like, yep, I'm better than you. I will be better than you. 84 was, I think, just the only number that I liked that was available. I was a huge Randy Moss fan. Growing up, I obviously love catching the deep ball, and I love just, his antics. I was always so confused why people were upset when he did the fake moon. Like, if he actually pulled his ass out, then I understand you being upset. But the fake moon is like, you're upset about the fake moon?
Yeah, of all the things.
Yeah, but 84 was that. 10, I became more of a soccer fan, and that was 84 wasn't available because of Jordan Cameron, tight end that came in with me that year. And so I was a soccer fan, and I knew that, that the best players in soccer always wore 10. And so that was something that I did there. 12 was a number that I wore in Pop Warner when I was young. I wore a bunch of different numbers in Pop Warner, but yeah, 12 was one of them. So I went back to that. And then we made a couple like funny like t-shirts around because, they called the police 12. And these shirts that said the only 12 we fuck with. And, it was me. And so we did that. And so, yeah, that's kind of the story of all of those. I think 10 ended up being the one that if I do a signature or something now, somebody comes to me, I always put 10.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. What do you sign your autographs with? It's 10.
10. Very cool. Yeah. So it's funny you say that, and you see kickers who, so many of them were soccer players also, and they love that number 10. Lindo Amare, who wore 10 for a long time here with the Dolphins, would say that.
Like, Stoyanovich, number 10.
Pete was you got to wear 10 if you're that dude. So good stuff. Okay. Final segment. We promised you, we always say that. Hey, we're going to get you out of here in a minute. Final segment. And like any exciting game you've ever, except for the Miami Miracle, because that takes the cake. But typically an exciting game ends with a 2-minute drill. So we wrap up every podcast with our fish tank 2-minute drill. You've got 2 minutes on the clock. I don't have a clock to show you, but I know you've done enough of these where you got them in your head. Let us know if you need any timeouts, and we'll throw you a few, hopefully fast-paced questions, hopefully fun questions, and then we'll truly get you out of here. Sound good?
Cool.
All right,
I'll start it off. Well, this is probably
I think we know the answer.
This is a no-brainer right here on this one here. Jay-Z or Nas? Who you rolling with, Kenny?
Yeah. We know the answer is Nas.
Right. Let's move on to the next one, Big Seth.
All right, moving on. Okay. You have definitely turned your body into a canvas with a significant amount of tattoos. Is there any one that stands out above the rest as the most meaningful tattoo that you have?
Well, I have the scene of the crucifixion on my back. And across it, I recently had them write big words in red, rebel or rebel. And I think that whole scene to me, has always it's made me think, it's like, who would I have been, at the scene of the crucifixion? And so I would have hoped that, I would have done something to stop that or to make a difference in that scene. And so, yeah, just that whole tattoo together.
Clock still running, Big Seth?
Still running.
All right. From snowboarding in Switzerland to the Taj Mahal to tiger safaris to sumo matches in Japan. I mean, your passport is beyond full. What has been the most amazing trip you've ever taken?
Man, so I did the tiger safari in India on my birthday, and so we see the tigers. You know, they're close. It's like some National Geographic type stuff. And I had forgotten that moment that it was my birthday. We're riding out, and my partner's like, you know, it's his birthday, right? And like, I literally was so lost in the sauce from seeing these tigers that I had forgot. And so something like that. I mean, all the trips I try not to compare, but something like that where like I literally forgot who I was and what was happening. I was just so enamored by the tigers. But yeah, most recently that takes the cake.
I love big cats. I love big cats.
He does indeed. All right, you've moved the chains. You didn't slide before the first down marker on this one, Kenny. Last question. I typically try to come up with something funny for our last question, but I think this is more appropriate for you. You have a great appreciation for individuals who have made their mark in this world. If you could be accompanied on your next trip by any person on this planet, past or present, living or dead, who would it be and where would the two of you go? You got deep with you today, Kenny.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough choice, but I mean,
2-minute drill, like it's crunch time.
Yeah, I think you know, going back to the motherland with somebody like Angela Davis or John Lewis or like Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X, or you know, just like having that experience with them. You read about them and their experiences there, but to have somebody who has had that wisdom and knowledge, you know, you go to a place, when you travel, I always try to meet the locals, right, and get to learn the history of a place from their experience, from their perspective. And so, yeah, one of my favorite things to do nowadays is to chat with the elders in my life, whether that's my friends' parents, or, you know, mentors that I have, because they have so much experience, right? And I'm just trying to add value in the way that, you know, add on to the things that they've already done. And so any of, you know, my mentors, to be able to go back to Africa and experience and learn, you know, that's huge.
That's the 2-minute drill, Juice. I think he punched it in the end zone for sure.
Definitely scored.
Yeah, man. Kenny,
he wasn't on his back on this one, Big Seth. He was in the end zone celebrating.
That's right. He was the one. Right. Everybody else was in awe. So listen,
ball in the end zone, into the fans. And I held on to that ball.
Yeah, right. Keep that one.
Right,
definitely keep that one for the trophy case, for the mantle. Kenny, this was awesome, man. We had high expectations, but it exceeded all of them.
Man, it's so good.
And it reminded me how much I missed chatting with you. So, yeah, thank you for spending the time and making the time. Juice, when a guy's on a surfboard in Indonesia and he's scheduling an interview with you 2 weeks down the line, right, you know, I got a lot of respect for him.
1,000%. 1,000%, Big Seth.
Absolutely, man. You know, I got a ton of respect for y'all, and that's why it was so easy to just say, hey, let's pick a date and let's get this thing done. So love chatting with y'all. You know, you having me back whenever. You know, I got some things going on. I got a book coming out next year. I wrote about the protests. I wrote about mental health. I wrote about my experience with psychedelics and plant medicine, and in like a little short periodical memoir. And so, yeah, hopefully I can get that out to you guys. You guys can check it out and we can talk
Please.
about
it.
Oh,
definitely. Count us in, bro. We'll get you
Say
back
the
on
word.
for sure.
Cool.
Definitely get you back on, man. Hey, Kenny, thanks for diving in, man.
Absolutely.
Drive up in that fish tank. Who that? Sitting down with Seth Living, OJ, Juice Man, ooh, and this is strictly for them true fans, dog fans. Number one, of course, y'all, this ain't no ordinary.